of the geography of the scene, and it was this that allowed intelligence operatives to work out exactly where they were going to go. This was months in the planning, and these diagrams and photographs certainly showed that. And John Brennan also gave a little hint of the atmosphere inside the Situation Room as all of this was happening.
It was probably one of the most anxiety-filled periods of time, I think, in the lives of the people who were assembled here yesterday. The minutes passed like days, but it was clearly very tense, a lot of people holding their breath, and there was a fair degree of silence as it progressed, as we would get the updates. And when we finally were informed that those individuals who were able to go on that compound and count an individual that they believe was bin Laden, there was a tremendous sigh of relief.
John Brennan there speaking at the White House. Robert in Washington, thanks very much. Well, of course, as John Brennan said, Pakistan is key now to understanding what's been happening in the life of Osama bin Laden over the last few years and how this operation took place. Our special correspondent, Alex Crawford, has arrived in Abbottabad in Pakistan, where bin Laden, of course, met his end, and she has the latest from there.
Well, the American president might have watched it all unfolding in real time, but according to the Pakistani government and the Pakistani president, the entire city here in Abbottabad of just fewer than 1 million people did not know either that Osama bin Laden was living amongst them, or that there was this amazingly executed American operation which no Pakistani authority was involved in. The Pakistani president had an emergency meeting with the Pakistani Prime Minister and the head of the military here in Pakistan. It was held in the capital at the President's house, at which they drew up basically emergency plans and a statement which they released to the Pakistani public through the Foreign Office, saying that no Pakistani person was involved in the operation. They didn't know about it until after it had happened. And that they feared basically a backlash throughout the country of retaliatory terrorist attacks from lingering Al-Qaeda supporters or probably the Pakistani Taliban. Now, earlier on today, the Pakistani Taliban were quick to say that they did not believe this had happened, and they did not believe that Osama bin Laden was actually dead. Within the past hour or so, they've revised that statement. Now they do accept he's dead. There will be an awful lot of questions about just how much the Pakistani intelligence, the ISI, knew about it, and indeed how much the Pakistani military knew about it, bearing in mind the military academy is a huge structure in this town, and most of the population is in one way or another connected to the military.
Alex Crawford there in Pakistan. Now, of course, nowhere was safe from bin Laden's terror, from Africa to Europe, Asia, of course, and notably here in the United States. Tonight at Ground Zero, the site of his most spectacular attack, almost 10 years ago, there is a mood of celebration amongst people that he is now dead.
It was nearly 10 years ago. The bright September day was darkened by the worst attack on the American people in our history. The images of 9/11 are seared into our national memory.
America will never forget what he did 9 years and 8 months after 9/11. It has its revenge. The man reviled for the deadliest terrorist attack in American history, paid with his life. Even before his death was confirmed, crowds gathered, a spontaneous show of unity and celebration. In Times Square, the emergency services, so honoured for their work on 9/11, were joined by the actor Rob Lowe in their celebrations. Outside the White House, they celebrated a day, according to opinion polls, which most Americans had given up hope of seeing. On a subway train, they chanted their celebrations. And at Ground Zero, more somber, but that feeling again that justice had been done. Today it's back to work for New York. The party atmosphere is gone. Instead, that determination to get on with their lives once again. But ahead of the 10th anniversary and the unveiling of the 9/11 memorial on September the 11th, the death of Osama bin Laden has a genuine significance here.
The fact that bin Laden and his organization Al-Qaeda caused people to jump 1,000 feet from out of these buildings to their death because of the conditions inside. If there was one person on this planet that deserved to die, it was Osama bin Laden, and it's just tremendously good news.
As if to remind America that this is a war not won, security alerts were issued in New York and across the world over possible retaliation. But this is news that restores America's pride. It could also be the sort of boost that secures a second term in the White House for Barack Obama. Even political opponents were quick to praise him.
The president deserves particular praise for it, the courage that it took to do this, because had it gone wrong, he'd have been the one that was blamed. And this could have just as easily gone wrong as gone right. When you do a mission like this, the intelligence could be incorrect, something could go wrong. We've seen these missions fail in the past. I think it took a lot of courage on President Obama's part to order this, and I admire him for it.
Who would bet against the man who's just delivered what Americans have spent a decade praying for? And President Obama is due to give another update at 1:15 tomorrow morning UK time. We'll of course bring that to you live here on Sky News. Now it's worth remembering that despite facing the full military and intelligence might of America and its allies for 16 years, Osama bin Laden did evade capture for all of that time. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Lisa Holland reports now on the hunt for history's most infamous fugitive.
Let's just get back. Get back.
He wasn't new to the terror scene, but it was September the 11th, 2001, which catapulted Osama bin Laden into the global psyche as the world's most wanted man.
The people who knock these buildings down will hear all of it soon.
Standing in the rubble of Ground Zero, America's then President George Bush pledged to find bin Laden, dead or alive.
I said a long time ago, one of our objectives is to smoke them out and get them running and bring them to justice. We're smoking them out, they're running, and now we're going to bring them to justice.
Within months, America was carpet bombing Afghanistan's Tora Bora mountains, convinced he was hiding out in an underground cave. But bin Laden outfoxed the Americans. A full-scale and high-cost war in Afghanistan unfolded. He would go on to play cat and mouse for nearly a decade. After the disappointment of Tora Bora, it was another 15 months before the hunt threw up any really significant developments. The arrest of Al-Qaeda's supposed number 3, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in Pakistan, led the Americans to track a vehicle convoy through the Afghan-Pakistan border, but there was no bin Laden. For the entire decade, the Al-Qaeda leader has drip-fed infrequent audio and video recordings, almost as a proof of life and to taunt the US. This one was released in 2004, days before George Bush sought a second term in office, going to the electorate no closer to finding bin Laden, who was now threatening a repeat of 9/11.
Let me make this very clear. Americans will not be intimidated or influenced by an enemy of our country.
America was convinced bin Laden had to be in Afghanistan or Pakistan, and in 2004 persuaded Pakistan's president to launch an offensive along the border. He described it as their best chance of capturing bin Laden, but the trail went cold. There were countless high-profile assaults, ever fruitless in spite of the high-tech surveillance and weaponry deployed. Hundreds of Allied troops were killed, and still bin Laden proved elusive. But it was the aftermath of a series of bombings, including 2 US embassies in East Africa, which probably took the US closest to finding bin Laden until now. In the late 1990s, Bill Clinton had sanctioned a series of missile strikes on Al-Qaeda camps. It said they missed bin Laden by only an hour. The West knew bin Laden was still alive a few months ago when he lashed out at the French government. It wasn't just the Americans who wanted him dead. He is a voice and face that styled a chapter of modern warfare, a warped ideologist who even the world's best armies took a decade